It happened in the middle of what should have been a sweet, wholesome moment. Machine Gun Kelly, real name Colson Baker, was just holding his baby daughter, Saga, during a casual day out. A stranger approached, smiled, and told him, "You're such a good dad." But instead of melting into a proud grin, MGK later revealed that his ex, Megan Fox, was fuming. Not because she doesn't think he's a good father, but because, as MGK put it, she's the one doing most of the work. In a recent interview, MGK laughed about the awkwardness, admitting that while he's happy to be there for his daughter, most of the heavy lifting, the sleepless nights, the feeding, the constant care, is handled by Megan. He even compared himself to a music teacher who just plays guitar for the baby and hopes she's happy. The comment was lighthearted, but you could tell from his tone that this was one of those moments every couple, or ex-couple, has, where a well-meaning compliment hits a very real nerve. But why would Megan react so strongly? Was it just a flash of annoyance? Or does it reveal something deeper about their dynamic, both when they were together and now as co-parents? To understand the weight behind that moment, you have to go back to the start of their whirlwind romance, a relationship that played out like a Hollywood fever dream. Red carpets, tabloid headlines, tattoos, blood vials, breakups, makeups, and everything in between. The story really began in 2020, when Megan Fox was cast opposite Machine Gun Kelly in the crime thriller Midnight in the Switchgrass. At the time, Megan was still married to Brian Austin Green, the father of her 3 older children. But on set, something clicked, and not in a slow burn, polite Hollywood way. MGK would later admit that the moment he looked into her eyes, he knew what it was. Their connection was instant, intense, and in the middle of a pandemic, it exploded into public view. By the summer of 2020, paparazzi shots started flooding the internet, hand-holding in parking lots, late-night outings, matching outfits. This wasn't a low-key romance. It was high-octane from the very start. Then came the interviews. Megan famously called MGK her twin flame in a podcast appearance. Not just a soulmate, but something deeper, almost cosmic. MGK, equally dramatic, said meeting her was like seeing bright white light for the first time. Fans were hooked, and so were the tabloids. In a time when celebrity gossip was dominated by carefully curated Instagram posts, these two brought back the unfiltered chaos of early 2000s pop culture couples. Unpredictable, intense, and impossible to ignore. But with all that chemistry came scrutiny, and from day one, their relationship was under the brightest of spotlights. By late 2021, Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly weren't just dating, they were creating a spectacle. Every time they stepped onto a red carpet, it was a calculated explosion of chaos, fashion, and PDA. Megan would turn up in skin-tight, high-slit gowns that looked like they'd been cut with a razor, MGK in shimmering suits or leather harnesses, hair dyed in electric shades. But one story would overshadow all the wardrobe changes and headline-grabbing kisses: the blood. MGK casually revealed in an interview that they wore vials of each other's blood around their necks. He didn't say it with a wink either. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. The internet went into overdrive. Some thought it was gothic romance at its finest. Others thought it was flat out unhinged. Megan later downplayed it, saying it wasn't some creepy occult ritual, just a few drops exchanged when they had to be apart for a while. But the clarification didn't matter. The image was burned into pop culture forever. It fed into the fantasy, the myth of MGK and Megan Fox, a couple so intense they needed a literal blood connection. It was dangerous, it was weird, and it was perfect for keeping them in the headlines. Of course, building a brand on passion and shock value is risky, because when the fire starts to cool, the cracks don't just show, they explode. It started the way so many celebrity breakups do. Not with an official statement, but with silence. In early 2023, fans noticed that Megan Fox had deleted almost every photo of MGK from her Instagram. The posts that once screamed "Twin Flames Forever" were suddenly gone, replaced with cryptic quotes about dishonesty and betrayal. Within hours, breakup rumors were everywhere. Paparazzi shots became rarer. Public appearances felt strained. When they did show up somewhere together, it was no longer the unstoppable PDA heavy force from 2021. It was awkward smiles, brief hand touches, and quick exits. Reports began surfacing about heated arguments behind the scenes, and insiders claimed their once unstoppable chemistry was wearing thin under the pressure of constant media attention. They were still talking, still seen together here and there, but the fairy tale sheen had dulled. The blood vial, the matching outfits, the cosmic love story, it all seemed like a distant memory. Fans split into two camps: those who believed they were just going through a rough patch, and those convinced the relationship had crossed a line it couldn't come back from. And yet, just when it seemed like it might all be over, they'd find a way to make headlines again. By mid-2024, the Megan Fox and MGK saga had turned into a roller coaster with no seatbelts. One week, headlines screamed they were over for good. The next, they were spotted together at an after-party, looking like nothing had changed. It was the kind of unpredictability that kept fans glued to every gossip feed, because no one could quite figure out what game they were playing. When Megan announced she was pregnant with their daughter, Saga, it threw another curveball into the storyline. Some assumed it meant they were back together for good. Others saw it as proof that their connection ran deeper than labels. Exes, partners, parents, none of it seemed to fit neatly. Then came the co-parenting sightings. Trips to Costa Rica, joint appearances at family events, even the occasional social media tag. They weren't broadcasting their private life the way they once had, but when they did step out, the internet lit up. Were they reconciling, or just proving they could raise a child without tearing each other apart in public? The mystery only grew when MGK started talking about his new music, a deeply personal album that, he hinted, would include references to Megan herself. What no one expected was just how directly she'd be tied to Lost Americana. Just when fans thought Megan Fox had faded out of MGK's creative world, her name appeared somewhere no one expected. The credits for his latest album, Lost Americana. It wasn't a hidden Easter egg either. There it was in black and white, Megan Fox, officially credited. The album itself is a moody, raw mix of confession and reflection. Songs like Treading Water and Orpheus feel steeped in regret, longing, and complicated love. And while MGK hasn't spelled out exactly how Megan influenced specific tracks, the credit says enough. She's still woven into the fabric of his art. For fans who had been reading between the lines for years, this was the proof they'd been looking for. Whatever was happening between them, it clearly wasn't the clean break some thought it was. The relationship, in one form or another, was still alive in his music, and it wasn't just the album. Around the same time, MGK's interviews began leaning more personal, more vulnerable, talking about fatherhood, mistakes, and the lessons he'd learned. The timing was impossible to ignore, but for a couple as unpredictable as this, album credits are just one piece of the puzzle. The real question was, where were they headed next? In early 2025, MGK appeared on Today with Jenna and Friends, an interview that seemed lighthearted on the surface, but quickly became headline material. At one point, he recalled holding baby Saga when a stranger came up, smiling and said, "You're such a good dad." It was meant as a simple compliment, but as MGK told it, Megan's reaction was instant. She was fuming. He laughed while explaining why. It wasn't that Megan didn't think he was a good father. It was the fact that she's the one carrying the bulk of the day-to-day parenting. She's the one getting up at night, feeding the baby, keeping everything running smoothly, while he, in his own words, is more like the music teacher who shows up to play guitar and make the baby smile. The story was delivered with a grin, but underneath, it hinted at the exact dynamic fans have speculated about for years. Two people whose connection burns hot, but whose lives run in very different gears. And once again, they'd managed to turn a private moment into a public talking point without even trying. It was moments like this that made the Megan Fox-MGK relationship so endlessly watchable, because no matter how much you thought you knew, they'd find a way to surprise you again. As the years rolled on, Megan Fox's look became its own headline machine. Every time she stepped onto a carpet, whether alone or with MGK, the photos would set off a wave of speculation. Was it just makeup, a new hair color, or had she quietly had work done? She's never been shy about saying she takes care of herself, and she's openly credited beauty treatments like lasers and facials for keeping her skin flawless. But in the world of celebrity commentary, where a single unflattering angle can launch a week's worth of TikToks, even subtle changes can spark endless debate. The whispers weren't limited to Megan either. MGK's own style shifts, from bleach blonde pop-punk rebel to sleeker, more polished rocker, kept the visual interest alive. Together, they looked like a moving piece of art, always evolving, always feeding the machine. And that was part of the magnetism. Whether you believed Megan's look was all natural or the result of enhancement, it played perfectly into their brand. Intense, immaculate, and impossible to ignore. In a media landscape obsessed with transformation, they were living proof that change, whether in love, style, or appearance, was the surest way to keep people watching. By 2025, the wild highs and chaotic lows of the MGK-Megan Fox romance had settled into something different. They weren't the constantly hand-in-hand, PDA-heavy duo they once were, but they weren't strangers either. Instead, they had slipped into a rhythm that revolved around their daughter, Saga. Co-parenting became their new public image. Paparazzi photos caught them on quiet family outings, strolling through markets, taking beach walks in Costa Rica, and even sharing the occasional laugh in between. They weren't broadcasting their every move on Instagram anymore, but when they did appear in the same frame, the internet still lit up with speculation. Were they rebuilding something behind closed doors? Or had they simply mastered the art of keeping things civil for their child? Neither was confirming anything outright, which only made the curiosity grow. And in a way, that silence might have been their smartest move yet, because as much as the headlines had defined them, the mystery was now doing the heavy lifting. Every sighting became a story, every small gesture a potential clue. Whether you saw them as a modern rock and roll love story or a cautionary tale about passion burning too hot, MGK and Megan Fox carved out a place in pop culture that few couples ever reach. They were unpredictable, messy, magnetic, the kind of pair you couldn't look away from, even if you wanted to. From that first electric spark on a movie set to vials of blood and unfiltered red carpet chaos, to the quieter moments of raising a child together, their relationship has been a constantly shifting headline. And now, years later, it's not about whether they're on or off. It's about the fact that they've remained linked in life, in art, and in the public imagination. Even if they never fully reunite, their story will keep being retold, dissected, and debated. Because at its core, it's not just a love story. It's a saga about identity, image, and how far two people will go to live exactly how they want, no matter how the world reacts. And so we circle back to that moment. MGK holding his baby daughter, a stranger calling him such a good dad, and Megan Fox by his side, fuming in a way only someone who's lived the reality behind the headlines could understand. It was funny, it was telling, and it was pure MGK, Megan Fox. A relationship built on passion, performance, and the kind of honesty that keeps people talking years after the spark first hit. Where they go from here is anyone's guess. Maybe there's a reunion waiting in the wings. Maybe they'll stay exactly as they are now, bound together, but on their own paths. Whatever happens, you can bet it won't be boring. Because if history's taught us anything, it's that these two have a way of turning even the smallest moment into something the whole world wants to watch. And if you do want to watch, and hear every twist and turn as it happens, you know where to be. Celeb Wire is where we dig into the biggest celebrity stories, the hidden details, and the moments you don't see on the surface. So hit that subscribe, turn on the bell, and don't miss the next chapter in a story that refuses to end.